All the thoughts and views expressed in this video are the opinion of Professor Lex and for entertainment purposes only. Now, if you rock with the channel, hit that like button if you haven't hit that like button yet. And if you're on mobile, swipe left on the comments and hit that hype button for me. All right, let's get right into it. So the rumors are swirling around hip hop circles that Drake plans to have an interview soon. Now, courtesy of DJ Vlad and DJ Akademiks, aka Akadiddy, better known on this channel as members of the White Belt Level Ninja Clan, and the two DJs who don't spin any records or play any music. I heard Vlad used to allegedly, but anyway, Drake is going to have an interview with an unexpected person, probably not DJ Akademiks, even though he's been holding his jock for a very long time now. Probably not OVO, Mal, and Rory. But there are three candidates that I have seen a lot of smoke around their names. And if you can tell by the thumbnail, it would be these three. It would be Camron, whether it be on his Talk with Flea show on Revolt or the It Is What It Is podcast, with Mase and Treasure Wilson. Now, I'll get to how Treasure Wilson may have kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit or alluded to it a little bit on her Twitter. Now, the recent behavior and comments from some of the Joe Budden podcast members, as well as Joe Budden himself, have led people to believe mostly that Joe Budden would be the interview. And also, there is a wild card candidate that I don't think anybody is thinking about, which is Melyssa Ford. Now, I'm going to get into why I think Melyssa Ford is a candidate first, and it mostly has to do with the record Give Me a Hug, where Melyssa Ford received a shout out from Drake, and her being from Canada as well. Now, Melyssa Ford celebrated that shout out from Drake on her IG with this post here. Melyssa Ford, you a legend from the seas. Melyssa Ford, you a legend from the seas. Melyssa Ford, you a legend from the seas. And as you can see, she was frolicking on the beach as a 40-plus-year-old woman. Very excited about that. And it's a big shout out to get a shout out from Drake. As you can see, fellas, sometimes the compliments for some women will get it done. But shout out to Melyssa Ford. And I think it would be a very strategic move for Drake to interview with Melyssa Ford if this is the case. I think it would be very messy, of course, because Melyssa Ford was a former member of the Joe Budden podcast. So far, she's an alleged former member. It's not official yet, I don't think. But this would give Drake a lot of ammo towards one of his biggest enemies, which has been Joe Budden in the past. Drake and Joe Budden have been sneak dissing and dissing each other back and forth for almost a decade now. And with Melyssa Ford being a part of the Joe Budden podcast, she would have a lot of information, I'm sure, to pass on to Drake about not only the operation of the show and the podcast, but also maybe some of the inner workings of Joe's business and network as a whole. That would be right up Paperwork Poppy's alley, as he is kind of a devious person, as he has shown to be. And he is not going to let go, losing to Kendrick. That's why an interview being messy or being controversial and getting a lot of eyes on it. Also, in an interview with Melyssa Ford, he would be able to play the victim card, which he does like to play. We know that. That's why this would probably be his next best move. So Melyssa Ford, in every way, an interview with her would fit into those categories. And also the beef with Joe Budden is why people think that an out-of-the-box interview would be actually with Joe Budden. Now, do I think this is going to happen? It would be brave. It would be brave on both the part of Drake and both the part of Joe Budden, because Joe Budden would be challenged not to lose integrity, and Drake would be challenged not to interview with somebody who probably would not let him control the interview. Now, do I think this is going to happen? No, but I can see where people get it from, because recently on the Joe Budden podcast, they have gone a little bit out of their way to take some certain little shots and digs at Kendrick. And I did a whole video on that, as the thumbnail appears on the screen now, and you can click the link to that at the end of the video and in the description as well. But I don't think that Joe Budden or Drake would risk interviewing with each other, but it would be a heck of a risk. Like I said before, it would be very brave for either one of them to take that. And whoever gets this interview is going to get a bag if it is the right person. Let me say it that way. If it is either one of these three, it's going to be extremely viral. Now we get into Cam and Mase, and It Is What It Is podcast hosted by Treasure Wilson. Now, Treasure, aka Stat Baby, recently made a tweet, and it drew the attack of the OVOs toward her because she's tweeted out the other day, man, I want to interview Drake before he turns 40 next year, right? And the OVOs brought up to her that during the battle on May 2nd of 2024, she said, I'm sticking beside Kendrick, I don't care. Now, she made that tweet, I believe, after Camron and Mase went on their platform, and they still had Drake, or they still were at least giving Drake some props in the battle, and had Drake in the lead at one point, as you see on the screen here. They were defending Drake pretty heavy. They were known as some of the media that was hating on Kendrick and keeping up the East Coast, West Coast bias and things like that. But we have to remember, if you didn't know, Drake brought out Dipset when he performed at the Apollo a few years ago. So him and Cam have a pretty good relationship. So Cam was pretty much sticking by his industry buddy there. Now, this would be a huge look, and I think this is the most likely candidate to have this interview because it would give Drake some hip hop credit in his mind, right? It would galvanize maybe some of the quiet support that he has on the East Coast to be a little bit more louder, be a little bit more boastful, right? Because again, as Kendrick has said before, he's learned that some ninjas don't like the West Coast, and he's fine with it. He'll push a line with it. So Drake has been trying to restart this battle. If you hadn't been paying attention, Meet the Grams, he's not gonna let that one go. Even though they sued over Not Like Us, the real issue is Meet the Grams. Meet the Grams hurt the most. Okay, check out my lyrical breakdown of that record when it happened on the channel, as you see in the thumbnail on the screen here. That will also be, the link to that will also be at the end of this video. Click on that card. Probably the best breakdown I've done of a Kendrick song thus far because of the depth of the explanation of Meet the Grams. And Meet the Grams 2 will be coming soon after the lawsuit has been dismissed. We can speak freely about some of the things alluded to in that record. But I think Drake wants to keep whatever interview he has as biased in his favor as possible. Now, do I think Cam and Mase will totally throw their integrity out the window? I don't. I think Melyssa Ford would benefit the most from just going along with the narrative to do that. She has no reason to not want to be on Drake's side, being from Toronto, and she wasn't exactly singing Kendrick's praises during the battle, right? She kind of kept it even, as she should. She's not a rapper or anything like that. Cam and Mase did eventually say Kendrick won the battle when Not Like Us dropped. So there's that. Drake is very petty, but I think he can overlook that with the value that he thinks he may get from interviewing with Cam and Mase. So I think that they will get the interview. Now, it is interesting that these three are being rumored to have this interview because they have prior beef with each other. Now, I just spoke about Melyssa Ford leaving the Joe Budden podcast and the issues they have with each other. But Cam and Melyssa Ford, while she was on the podcast and she made some comments about Cam that were kind of out of bounds and out of the way, he and Melyssa Ford had a little bit of a back and forth. Now, the podcast, all the hip hop podcasts for the most part, do take subtle shots at each other. So It Is What It Is podcast and the Joe Budden podcast, even though they respect each other, I'm not saying they have any beef or anything like that, they do watch each other and they do watch what each other says and look for, it's all competitive, right? Let me just put it that way. It's all competitive in the podcast space, even in the YouTube spaces, all that. It's competitive, it's friendly competition. I think sometimes people are vying for the number one spot, I guess, especially in the hip hop podcast area, even though Cam and Mase and them do sports for the most part. Joe Budden and them do current events. But this whole situation in paperwork poppy fashion is very messy. Do I think it will have any real impact? It could. It could. If he does a proper interview with Melyssa Ford or with Cam and Mase, people who sit on the fence and don't feel strongly about either dissing Drake or being against Drake or being for Kendrick, people who sit on the fence, Drake may gain some of his popularity back if the interview is done correctly. If it is done with one of these three people, I think it would have the most impact. Now, if he does it with somebody else, that could be somebody I'm not thinking about. And if you can think of anyone, put it in the comments below. But this is not over, unfortunately. I don't know when this is going to end. I don't really see an end for this in sight because it's like Drake won't give up not having the same position that he had before. I think he could have easily went away from this and kind of went away from hip hop for a while and went into the other genres. But as long as Kendrick is winning and not saying anything back and feeling totally unaffected and just keeps striving and setting records and things, they just can't let it go. The ego will not allow Drake and the OV hoes and the secret OV hoes, shout out to everybody who I mentioned in this video, who might be secret members of OVO Nation. Sorry, but sometimes it appears that way. But this is going to be a huge business move for whoever gets it now. But I think the Joe Budden podcast, Joe Budden risks his future in doing an interview with Drake if he doesn't handle it the right way, if it doesn't go the right way. I just don't think that they trust each other enough, even though the opportunity is great. The risk is too much, as I said before. Both Melyssa Ford and Cam and Mason, it is what it is, and Treasure Wilson, if they allow her to participate in the interview as well, if it happens, they can gain a lot. Now, but Cam and Mase do also risk some integrity. Some of their hip hop integrity will be risked because a lot of people who are viewing Drake in a different light will not be for them participating in this. Do they care? I don't think they care one bit because they're looking at the growth opportunity as opposed to the risk. Melyssa Ford would come up humongously. Her Hot and Bothered podcast would become a household name with a proper Drake return to, I guess, life, resurrection, so to speak, since nothing else has resurrected him up to this point. That would make her podcast a household name. So she would definitely have the most to gain. That's all I have, man. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below. Like I said earlier, if it's anybody you think I missed, please name them in the comments. And let's have a discussion about this. Hit that like button if you haven't hit that like button yet. Hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed. Share this video. Tell a friend to tell a friend. If you on mobile, swipe left on the comments and hit that hype button for me as well. Thank y'all for watching as always, and we out.